And we do thank you so much for taking this time to join us. We are live from Kadoma, where we've been having a media and election workshop, very key event, historic specifically for the media sector, to actually see various political parties being fully represented at the highest level. Today and right now, we are so much excited to have the ZANU PF, the CCC, the MDC, all fully and equally represented right here. And this has been a two-day engagement workshop where we saw various political parties fully engaging mutually with so much respect as they've been doing right here. Today we're just going to be catching up on the developments that have been happening today at this workshop, so that we have reflections from these various three political parties. I'll just quickly give them the microphone just to introduce themselves as I welcome lady and gentlemen at this show. Thank you so much. I'll do honor ladies first. From my right, Ellen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ellen Shiriwilenga, change champion responsible for elections in the CCC party.
Mr. Witness.
Good afternoon to your viewers, and thank you for having me today. My name is Witness Dube, and I am the Secretary for Information Publicity.
Last but not least, Mr. Tafaz.
Of course. My name is Tafaz Mbwadi, Director Information and Publicity for the ruling party, ZANU.
Right, so we've got these three top political parties in Zimbabwe fully represented, and topical issues today that we're talking about in the past 2 days, issues of tolerance, making sure that Zimbabwe 2023 going forward with a peaceful, credible and acceptable election. Your reflection on this, as a political party, what role are you playing to make sure that Zimbabwe has a free and safe environment coming to the next election?
Okay, basically as political parties, we are key players in this electoral environment, and we have an obligation to ensure that we practice whatever election processes, our campaigning is done in a peaceful manner. And also we have an obligation to promote harmony, not just amongst us internally, but also including other political players out there. And not just players, but also in view of our workshop today, we're dealing with the media. As political parties, a lot of, and the media, in our interaction, a lot of issues were raised, particularly the way we relate to each other. Admittedly, from the media, at some point, some complained about the hostility from political parties, and also we, as from the CCC, also we highlighted concerns with respect to the conduct of some, media houses and journalists in terms of, unfair coverage and which is not balanced. With disregarding the provisions of our constitution, even the Electoral Act, to say that the media should actually, promote equitable coverage. That has not been happening, and also even, issues to do with misinformation, which is put by some media houses. That was a cause for concern. So really, we highlighted those issues, and what we took note of is the fact that media houses have various editorial policies, which at the end of the day do affect whatever is written about political players. And really that is a concern, to say the editorial policies of any media house should not infringe on the objective and professional coverage of political activities. Like, for example, there was an issue where the CCC launched its launch rally earlier this year. What came out from ZBC was not a true reflection of what transpired during the rally, and also there were those concerns. So really it's a two-way kind of an approach, and this workshop, in a way, it brought into light a lot of concerns, both from the media houses and always political parties. But one thing that we cannot run away from is the fact that the media has a very important role in terms of ensuring that political processes are well covered, and also in terms of informing the publics with regards to political activities, political manifestos and policies, such that the voters will be able to make informed decisions when it comes to voting. So that's basically the role of the media. And also, with regards to elections, as the CCC, we feel the media is the interface between us and the voters in a way. So they have a role in terms of monitoring electoral processes. And when they monitor, their ethical issues, they breach in terms of their, ethical conduct. So we realize there is limited regulation when it comes to that. Anyone can do whatever he or she wants, breach the code of ethics for media, and nothing happens to that particular person. So what we are saying is the Media Commission and ZAC should have a collaborative approach in terms of coming up with a code of conduct that is going to regulate the operations and the conduct of media houses.
All right, we'll jump into those flesh and bits later on. Mr. Witness, your reflection on this very important workshop that we've had here.
Well, firstly, I think as a party we are very grateful to the conveners of this workshop, and it couldn't have come at a better time than at the very top loop of our electioneering season, of our campaign season, because it actually helped the major political parties to get a grasp of how they can navigate the electoral terrain through the use of media, and it also gave a sidelight on the media, on the expectations from political parties. This workshop had editors from nearly all the major media houses one can mention, and also practicing journalists, but the resource persons were also people who have been in the professional with lived experiences in terms of being involved in the thick of things at election time. We also had, people from outside of Zimbabwe who gave us, a nuanced understanding of how the interface between the media, the political parties, and the electorate really could best go about so as to produce outcomes that are favorable for national development. So we as a party, we are very grateful for this, and we want and we pray for all the political parties and the participants to take full opportunity of the understanding, the engagement that went on in this workshop, particularly because we believe that dialogue is the way forward for this country. It should be a choice strategy, not just for political parties. It is something which, when we talk about, it should not really be in reference to our party alone, but it should be an issue that carries the day across all of us as Zimbabweans, because as you can see here, we would be wearing different colors, with my brother here, Mukwadi, from the ruling party, my sister here, Ellen, from the Citizen Coalition for Change party. But over and above that, we are Zimbabweans, and in fact, we are Zimbabweans first before we wear all those kinds of different jackets. So we must always find common ground to engage on national issues, to have dialogue on all pertinent issues, and be deliberate about it, because this is what is going to bring about solutions to our country. This is what is going to actually make all our good manifestos come alive. If you look at manifestos of political parties during elections, you will have a difficult time picking which one is better than the other. But then it then comes down to the systems that are used in terms of governance for the ruling party, in terms of electioneering and seeking for that governing authority for us in the opposition. So we need such platforms to engage, so that we know how to put our messages across to the electorate, and the media being the fourth estate to this workshop exposed. And I think if the media practitioners themselves had underestimated their role, after this workshop they are in the clear of how important they are and how responsible they have to be in terms of their reportage, balance, fairness, and all the other things that maybe you would want to get into shortly. But yes, this was a very enriching engagement, which we feel we are richer for having been part of.
Right. Mr. Pazo, your same reflections on this and the importance or significance of this reaction.
I would be lying if I said I would. I do have much more to say especially in the light of what my two colleagues from CCC and MDC have said. I think I'll be wasting much of your time if I say I had something to add.
Okay, I love that. It helps us to jump quickly into the next issues. And I'll start with you while we're still there. The biggest problem that we've had here in Zimbabwe, specifically each and every election, Zimbabwe has been stuck up in a period where every time we have an election, we have a disputed election. We have an environment that is said to be unconducive for free, fair and credible election. And one of those factors has been the issue of violence. Mr. Fasgo, your party ZANU as a politician has been also pinpointed and blamed to be driving political violence. What role are you playing? What role have you played in the violence? And what can we do to make sure that we do not have violence going forward as far as the next elections are coming? I see you have changed your posture. I hope you're not already firing shots, because usually you fire them shots, but we are still at the warming stage of this interview. I'm loving the mushiness that we're having here, and I want to see how best we can sustain. If we can sustain this here, surely your followers can sustain this. I'm doing this so that we refrain, restrain, and make sure that we maintain the same unity, but still having facts being discussed here. So back to you, Mr. Fasgo. Sorry for coming back and putting you back into this here.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, Ellen. I appear to be charging towards you when I adjusted my sitting position. But I must say, you know, with regards to political violence, I think what needs to be said and what is reflected by the situation on the ground is that Zimbabweans across political parties, us and ZANU-PF, and even them in the opposition, notwithstanding that some of them are a year less even, they're still at their infancy. Of course, for one way or the other, whether that's a true reflection of who they really are or not. But I must say, I wouldn't be off-wire to congratulate them for being mature. I must say, Zimbabwean politicians across political parties have matured indeed. When you compare with our counterparts, both in the region and in other African communities. There is no doubt that Zimbabweans have come of age. And that, of course, here and there you find those instances happening. But if you look back into history, the magnitude of instances of violence, driven of course by all political players mostly, if you compare them with the current situation, there is no doubt that there is a monumental and significant decrease in instances of violence for political reasons, as it were. But be that as it may, the few instances that happen must never be things that should punctuate our elections. Elections in Zimbabwe must not mean that we are going through a season where we must set ourselves to lose relatives, where we are set to lose friends and foes. Somebody's gonna die or somebody's house is gonna be bad. That's not what we want to do during elections. Our elections must be a platform for what your president, I like your president when he says it's a rational disputation. Elections must be such platform to sell our policies to the people, to see who carries the day. So in terms of violence, really, the problem is you with the media. It is you, the media. You magnify issues and pontificate violence in your reporting. Because for one reason or the other, you want to portray others as victims and others as victimizers. So in the process, you pontificate violence. You magnify instances and make a storm out of a teacup. We've seen that with the media. You know, you saw what happened in South Africa when the former president, Jacob Zuma, was arrested. How many people died? We are told over 300 people in KwaZulu-Natal. Within the space of 2 days, even of an election. No one takes care about, no one gets, the media in Zimbabwe doesn't do adequate comparative research to say, what does that mean? Here was just a day where so much, such dozens of people were lost. But so can you, if you've seen the South Africans describing themselves as a violent community in terms of their politics, have you ever seen South Africa being discussed in the stakes of global notoriety about being a country where political violence is a common denominator.
What role
No.
did states play in that violence in South Africa?
Oh, listen,
Uh-huh.
listen. You see, this is how you seek to be selective, and that is not how that is not how you are, that is not how we should approach at issues. And I would not be comfortable to speak authoritatively about the instances, but what you are aware and what you cannot dispute is that over 300 people died in political violences in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal province, isn't it? We agreed about that. This is news that was coming from them. Okay. If you go to Kenya, you saw what happened in 2007. In 2008, we had those instances, isn't it, in Zimbabwe? But Kenya has never been described as a violent community, but you saw what happened there. In 2008, a year later after the violence that rocked Kenya, we had the same instances, isn't it, particularly around the runoff election. But what do Zimbabwean media do for the reasons that sometimes I find very hard to decipher? We start internationalizing our country as a violent community. You look at 2018 elections, probably described by other observers as the most freest and fairest elections, quite so peaceful by all standards, until the day after voting, just barely less than 48 hours after voting, some people were now in the streets demanding election results. I'm just giving you reasons. You know, and somehow some of those reasons were really quite very worrying, and we hope that those scripts are not going to replay themselves in 2023. People vote today on a Saturday, and what happens on the Monday, on a Sunday, or 48 hours, barely 48 hours after voting, somebody is saying, we now want the presidential vote when tallying for constituencies isn't even completed within 48 hours. And you get mobilized, they are now in the streets, and you saw what happened, isn't it? But who was to blame about that issue? People don't want to be fair enough. You saw what happened in the United States of America at Capitol Hill. No one describes America as a violent community for political reasons. But you know what happened at Capitol Hill when the former President Donald Trump refused to leave office after losing an election. You all know that, isn't it? So I'm saying it is completely fallacious, it is wrong, it is misplaced to describe our elections as violent elections by comparative standards across Africa and across jurisdictions. But indeed, those few instances need to be dealt with and nipped from the bud, and it starts with the changing of political cultures. We must begin to tolerate each other internally in ZANU-PF. If we get rid of violent instances in ZANU-PF, as we have been able to do under the Second Republic, and of course the reformed institution of ZANU-PF under President Emerson Mnangagwa, we have been able to get rid of those things. So already there is nothing that stops me from appreciating Witness as my brother, from appreciating Ellen as my sister, to be able to sit here and complimenting each other. It's on that basis that internally we have been able to make tolerance whole. Now we are going to the next stage where we are saying the president of the party, who is the major stakeholder and probably major player in elections himself, President Mnangagwa, says, what if you engage in violence? You'll have to carry your cross thereafter. No person must engage in violence as a means of political mobilization for the party.
Are we walking the talk?
That's what the president says. Listen.
From the presidential speech, are we
Now,
walking that talk?
This is where I'll come, Antonio, to then say, Witness and Ellen. When the president, Edim Mnangagwa, says that, you must understand this message from two perspectives. Firstly, this message can be said as an instruction to me and all other ZANU-PF members and leaders in rank and file, isn't it? You can say that message as a ZANU-PF president, but also take note that this person is the same president of the republic, the person in charge of our borders and sovereignty as a people. So you must be able to distinguish between his utterances as ZANU-PF president saying, stop violence, don't use it as a means of mobilization for the party. And then when he takes the same message to you as the president of the republic and the head of state and government. Now the danger is that some people appear to really take that message seriously, but others really don't take it seriously. No wonder why utterances such as that, I will revenge the death of so and so, or addresses such as I'll make sure kuti muno munoita zvimbokoma muno, munoita zvimbokoma muno, munofa vanhu muno, you know, those kind of messages. No wonder why messages such as I have got the capacity to mobilize violence. It's only that I don't want and I'm choosing retrain, but Msandi, don't push me too far. I can mobilize violence. There should not be an excuse for all such kind of messaging in our society. But yes, we understand people can be excited. Some are young enough to be that excited. Some are matured enough. And of course, although people say, you know, you look at me, I'm probably younger than other political contestants, particularly in the opposition. But I think I've done enough to mature, especially with regards to violence. But themselves are older than me, and you would have expected that maturity goes with wisdom, and maturity goes with age. But sometimes you realize in some special circumstances, age finds itself going alone.
Okay.
And living maturity. And
all right. Let me a very key and important factor that you raised there. When a whole president of a party and president of a republic of Zimbabwe says us as politicians, the political parties, we need to restrain and do away with violence. You come from a party that has been contesting elections for more than 20 years, specifically the MDC. The MDC has been at both ends, receiving and perpetrating ends of violence. What are you doing as a party to make sure that 2023 we do not have this continuation of violence, as it were?
Well, for the MDC, I think our history is in the public. We have been, for much of it, we have been on the receiving end. Yes, there would have been a few isolated incidents of violence, especially maybe during some of our internal processes, but it's nothing, at the magnitude that we have seen from my brother's party here. And he wants to paint a picture that the Second Republic is totally divorced from the First Republic, but that wouldn't be an accurate portrayal of things as we stand right now, because if that was the case, then we would go home and be happy and say we have arrived in Canaan. But the issue is we still have that culture, and they have to come to that reality and that soberness of thought to actually face that culture head on, face it head on, and we extinguish it. It did come out in the plenaries today and yesterday, issues to do with violence and how media covers it. And partly he is all right to kick the can down the road, to say sometimes the media also does contribute, because the newsworthiness of some of these inflammatory statements and all, they wouldn't find expression in our society if it were not for the media. And you'll find reputable media actually getting likes and retweets on Twitter, especially on social media. Media is very quick to give audience to such inflammatory statements and statements that are likely to cause public mutiny or violence and such like. The images, even it did come up that, is it responsible for a journalist to then say, because people were killed and they hacked each other, to then bring out those pictures and then inflame people and disturb people who are elsewhere, who then want to respond in anger on behalf of their colleagues who have suffered violence. So partly is correct to say media also has to improve. We need media to improve in their coverage of...
Fair enough. We will engage our fellow cadres in the media fraternity, but this one is yours as politicians, as political parties. MDC, for the past 20 years, we have seen violence from and against you. Well, what is your position and way forward as a nation as far as this case is concerned?
Our case is out now. You did hear him refer to rational disputation, which is a philosophy that we introduced to the political market, and we don't want to take much credit for it, because part of its trick is in us sharing it as our philosophy together. Once we start to push it like I then want votes from him, it will lose its relevance. But really, rational disputation means that we must be people who can sit down like we are doing now. What we are doing now really is a lived reality of what we in the political arena want our followers, our voters, the electorate to be doing. People must be able to engage beyond just throwing banter, beyond ridiculing each other, beyond being angry at each other, insulting at each other, beyond rancor, hate. They should be able to engage the way we are doing now and talk about issues, and even do so candidly to each other without resorting to any violence. People will see us in this interview until it ended without any swear words, any severe words being used on any other proper characterization of another. Unlike what we hear from the electorate, and we want them to take cure. We believe this is an ongoing work in our society. Will be vindicated maybe down the road. But us as a political party, we are saying we must come to an understanding that politics is a dialogue, a conversation about issues. Even an election, it is some form of a dialogue, because then it will be the turn of the electorate to talk back to the leadership that has been talking with to them through various political messages and media, such as rallies and mediums such as rallies and everything. So we want this culture, this new culture that we are trying to build. We are trying to build. I don't think we have arrived. I don't think my friend from the ruling party will be correct to say his party is totally divorced from the First Republic. If it has, people wouldn't really be still having the memories of the past. So we would want to go back there, but we want to say it's an ongoing effort where we are holding hands and really trying to get our parties, our politics working in a more synergy, that brings more synergy from the political parties, different as they are.
My sister Ellen, you are from a fairly new political party, and I think top of political violence that we may speak about is the Kwekwe incident, where your party was at the receiving end. Specifically, we also, there's the media covering this event. We saw some ZANU PF youths, or purported or reported, whichever position it may be, coming through, and your party members were attacked. You also lost one member, Mboneni. Your reflections on this political violence, and also your role as a political party as far as your youth as well instigating and provoking others to violence. What is your reflection around this issue?
Thank you so much for that. The starting point is that we should appreciate and accept as political stakeholders is the fact that Zimbabwe has a vicious cycle of violence. Throughout from our independence era through to the year 2000, 2005, 2002, even the past elections, of course, at least somehow the violence has been scaling down. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have violence in our country. So that is what we need to do, is to first arrest that vicious cycle. As long as we don't deal with the sins of the past, those keep on recurring. So let's deal with our past demons and make sure that we put up remedial measures to address those. Rightfully, the by-elections in March, for us as the CCC, we used those as a test run to see how prepared are we as a country in terms of containing the electoral environment, and also with regards to other electoral processes from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, administrative point of view, and of course with us in terms of our internal preparedness. There were clear issues when we're dealing with violence. We shouldn't look at violence from an isolated point of view. Like I said, we have a trajectory of violence dating back from our past. Looking at violence, there's that historical element, but what are the factors that contribute to our violence? Historically, we have people that perpetrated violence, and they're out there, they're scot-free. Nothing happened to them. No punitive measures at all, right? And some of them are even in parliament right now. Some of them are even ministers. Nothing has been done to them. That is the challenge as a country. clearly you commit violence, acts of violence, nothing happens to you. What happens? That there will be that perpetuation of violence. So this is where we are. Let's arrest our past demons. Let's deal with the causes of violence. In terms of dealing with those, this is one area that we as the CCC put forward in our electoral reform blueprint, prepare to say we need an enforceable code of conduct for political players, one, for candidates. Because if you notice, the violence which is perpetrated there is instigated by people who want political power. So deal with those. Let there be punitive measures. If one person is seen perpetrating violence, what will the other? That person eventually should be banned from contesting elections. That is, if he or she is proven guilty. That is one area of violence that we're talking about. The second is not from the political players only, but the environment itself. You know, like my brother Tafaja spoke about, we have people that get too excited. It doesn't have to do with maturity. We have older people, we have young people, they've all been there, you know, committing acts of violence. Just recently in Berlin, you know, there's a video which was circulating, and we had one person who actually addressing some fora, and I understand he's a religious leader, boldly saying that Chamisa should be killed, you know. And this is an influential religious leader who has a following. What's going to happen to his followers? Isn't they will follow suit? So it takes upon our responsibility as leaders, whether you are a traditional leader. Traditional leaders have the obligation to ensure that there is peace and harmony in and around their communities. This is what we are imploring them as CCC. And if you go to our prepared document, it's clear. A code of conduct for traditional leaders as well. Them, you know, leaving politics to the politicians. For them, their role is to ensure that they bring together their communities. Whether MDC, whether ZANU PF, whether CCC, they should campaign in harmony within their respective communities. That's the role of traditional leaders. Come the security forces, the police. Yes, the police, they are the custodians, you know, of somehow peace. Yeah? They are supposed to regulate peace, ensure that there's peaceful coexistence. There's no crime, there's no violence or people beating up each other. That is the role of the police. But we have seen the police in some instances, you know, perpetrating violence in a way. Like what happened in Gokwe. I know some journalists, I can't remember if they were from your media house, that were beaten up. But that was a sanctioned rally. Huh? We had written to notified them, and we sanctioned, but they not happened. You know, you go and disperse people violently, huh? And then we get blamed as political parties for instigating violence. So the police itself, they should conduct themselves in a professional manner. The way they execute MOPA, huh? They should ensure that there is no selective application of the law. This is what we are saying as the CCC. And we won't mince our words on that when it comes to that. They should play their role in ensuring that there's peace. Huh? We have cases you know, like I said, the March by-elections were more of a test run for us as the CCC. I can tell you with one of our candidates, he was a council candidate, is now a councillor now, you know, for Highfields. He got beaten up by my friends, colleagues from ZANU PF, huh? At his community. And those people are well known. He goes to the police to make a report. And what happens? He gets arrested. So that's the kind of, we expect police to conduct themselves in an impartial manner,
Right.
to apply the law as required.
Okay.
There comes the media. I think my colleagues have spoken about the media. We all know how media was at the center of promoting genocide in Rwanda. And if our media is not regulated, we risk going towards that route as a country. So I'm glad my colleagues here
They've
they've
already spoken
spoken
about that
about the
issue.
media.
Great.
And lastly, one area that we have not really spoken about as political parties is the violence against women during electoral processes. Women, I'm not as strong as they are. If Zvikapfoloka Israel, they can run and leave me behind. I can't run. Huh? So our electoral environment is not being so good to women. Not just women, but with persons with disabilities as well. The violence in our the violent culture in our electoral environment has proved to be a deterrent, for these communities of PWDs and also women. They have somehow deterred, their participation as candidates, as voters, or even within political parties.
Okay.
That has been a serious deterrent factor, which we need to deal with. We have, I'd forgotten, we have chapter, we have state institutions that are mandated to deal with violence.
Commissions.
Yes, commissions. There's the NPRC, with the Human Rights Commission, and also, of course, not to mention the Gender Commission. In a way, they have an input. We want to see them out there. This is the time. There won't be any better time. I remember at some point NPRC had district committees. I can't remember whether they were peace committees or what. We want those resuscitated. It's their mandate, They need to. We want a collaborative approach between ZEC and those Chapter 12 commissions to say, what are the issues? ZEC, you go to ZEC if there's violence. ZEC says, no, we don't have investigative powers. But then there are these commissions that do have those powers. We need a collaborative approach.
So they work together towards
They
such
need
issues.
to come up with some sort of a working relationship.
Okay.
We as political parties, not just us as activists, but there are citizens out there that can be victims of political violence.
Great.
But they don't know where to report.
All right.
They don't know where to go to.
Let me just hold you back there in the interest of time. Sister Ellen, as we do the second round to the closing of this, I'll still stick to you, and then I'll do left to right. Political violence is mainly instigated because of a political culture of not wanting to lose power. Political contestation comes from politicians who want to cling and hold on to power as the end. And the means justifies the ends, especially in such circumstances. Should your party lose this forthcoming election, what guarantee do we have that in the way towards it and after it, Zimbabwe will be a free and safe country without political violence?
For starters, we are a non-violent political party. We don't promote violence by all means. What we are doing as a party, we are strengthening our internal systems, and also as we are using parliament where we have representation, and also other theaters of the struggle, be it council, be it relationships with stakeholders, or even platforms like this, to dialogue on how best we can advocate for non-violent electoral processes and the outcome. And going to our prepared document, we speak of the security of the vote. and security of the vote, we are also talking about, a power transition mechanism. This is what we are pushing for. There has to be clarity on who is going to perform that role. As long as there is that clarity, surely there won't be any violence. But we as the CCC, we are putting up measures, and we are a non-violent party.
Do you have a guarantee that your political party is not going to be sending youth into the street, violent demonstrations and illegal activities around the country towards, during and after elections? Can you have a guarantee from a political party perspective?
That we can guarantee. Going back to where we are coming from, the March by-elections, there were lots of issues that went on. Looking even the violence that you spoke about in Kwekwe, if at all we're a violent party, surely there was going to be literal chaos, not just in Kwekwe, but throughout the country. But because we're a peaceful party, we encouraged our youth, our comrades that were there to say, no, this is what has happened. Let the police take over and perform its role. This is why we reported to the police. So otherwise we could have done it ourselves. We have been violent, but we are not. So this is the culture that we are in. So as the CCC, this is why we are persuading all relevant bodies that have the mandate to ensure a peaceful coexistence, to start now, to inculcate that culture of non-violence. This is why we are calling upon NPRC, the Human Rights Commission, Gender Commission, and this is why we are calling upon even the media. Media, start preaching peace. It's your responsibility. Give people accurate information so that they'll be able to, to make free choices at the ballot box. So this is where we are now.
Right.
Yes.
MDC youths in the last election, specifically after almost we had the peaceful 2018 election, we saw violence, specifically as your fellow colleague has alluded there, especially during the waiting time of the results. Some buildings were burnt, structures were burnt, and there were some violent demonstrations that we saw in Harare CBD. What kind of guarantee can we have that from here going forward, we are not going to be seeing your party specifically instigating its youths, specifically over violent behavior in and around electoral issues?
Yes, first and foremost, maybe I need to mention that what you saw happening in after the elections in 2018 was not from an institutional point of view. It was not even directed from the party offices. It was an instantaneous activity by some misguided persons who probably didn't understand the electoral process very well as to the waiting period. I think even the president then, who was the presidential candidate, said something that even didn't go down well with some of the people when he said the youth who had done that were actually, in his words, insane. I think that's what he said at the time, to indicate his total disdain. Then I'm talking about Advocate National Chamisa, who was the MDC and presidential candidate then. So it was clear even at that point. Yeah, he said he was stupid. Thank you for that. He said the people who had done that were actually very stupid, very severe indeed in his approach then. So it was clear from then that it wasn't an institutional, it was not an institutionally coordinated or instigated kind of action. But we want to keep emphasizing. This is why I was differing with my brother Mkwadi to say the Second Republic has been is totally been divorced from the first, because there are these incidents that cost in, that come in and spoil the party. Even from the opposition, as you are mentioning now, we had that incident, but we want to say we continue to work together very well to try and make sure that those kind of incidents are totally exterminated from our body politic, because it is very possible. I just want to emphasize on a point that she mentioned on women and the disabled, people living with disabilities in our society, and any other such disadvantaged persons. That look, You know, the strength of any nation's democracy is only measured by how it treats its weakest persons in society. So if my brother here is going to say his government has done so much, the pointers are always going to be how they are making it possible through the systems, the leverage of power that they have, to make sure that women and youth actually do come to a level of equity, as it were, of being at par, the gender parity programs that are in place. His government is responsible for actually empowering and affirming the institutions, the Chapter 12 institutions responsible for that. So, in fact, what then says is the importance or the surety of the word, of his word as a spokesperson of the ruling party is actually vindicated by the positive outcomes that may be coming there, or destroyed by the negative impulses that we'll continue to see there. You know, we changed our constitution in 2013 and we put up you know, proportional representation positions. We should be seeing an improvement towards 50-50, and we should be seeing a high retention of those women who have been in the PR positions coming back to win elections. But the fact that you still have somebody who was in the PR from 2013 and they are still finding it difficult to win an outright election against men, it means that something somewhere is not working. Which is why we've extended it, and you still have the same people who came through as PR people, not just in the opposition, but even in the ruling party. They have got permanent people now for those PR positions who are not moving. So it shows that we have not moved enough in terms of making politics a low-level entry volition, you know, occupation, so to speak, so that we move together with the other gender, with the fair agenda. We can only develop when we move together with our women, because this is how we develop at our homes. You know, any man who stays alone, if you want to face fact, you find that they really don't quite move as fast as somebody with a partner and a family and all. So we must, you know, use the same principles in terms of developing our nation, to affirm the female gender, to affirm the weakest in our society, the youth, the people living with disabilities, not just through pieces of legislation, but through verifiable practice by enforcing compliance through the Chapter 12 institutions.
Interesting. I'll quickly push this to you, Tafazo. Fear of losing political party and the need to win political parties from the opposition has been at the center of political contestation and political violence. The fear of losing political party that you've had as a ruling party been for more than 42 years now. Is ZANU PF ready for a free and fair election, and is it ready to accept defeat should it lose this election without invoking violence from these other contesting political parties?
Let me point out that at no point at all is ZANU-PF afraid of losing power. It should be that simple to a level-headed person who is a political player in Zimbabwe, and one who thinks like a Zimbabwean, and one who does not think or see reality from a Mars perspective. There is nothing existing at the moment that suggests or points to a potential loss for ZANU-PF in electoral terms. So if ever I was going to be stupid, I would postulate that when the situation on the ground is completely pointing to an uncontestable overwhelming victory with a majority, a thumping majority in parliament, more than what we have at the moment. And I'm not just speaking from the blues. I'm not just trying to throw political jabs. No. Why I'm saying this, Tonio and colleagues, is that honestly speaking, there were things really, some that have been pointed out that we that were characteristic of us as the Revolutionary Party back then, for one reason or another. But if you look at that, I don't know the scale which they are using to say we have not yet totally dispensed ourselves from the past. How they mean by saying totally, probably they know that's their only secret anyway. But from my point of view, and I think from the point of view of those that have seen our changing character, our reforms, both at government level, including that which we have been able to do then, which was the workshop that we had here, which was partly for purposes of complementing, enhancing, and asking for deeper reforms, media reforms. We have done so much to open up the political space to ensure that no person is criminalized for belonging to a different political party. But when people talk about violence, especially given what my sister said, and when people talk about, it is clear, what is clear to the listener, even at this juncture, is that there were some political organizations, witness, you agree, there were some political organizations, I don't want to point fingers, as has been often towards me in this discussion, but I will say, with the benefit of hindsight, that the viewers and listeners will understand what I'm talking about. There were political organizations who were formed on the false pillars of fighting for human rights. There were political organizations formed at the time when the land reform was taking place to stop and reverse it. There were political organizations who were formed and campaigned on the tag of victimhood. They will go about mobilizing communities saying the Revolutionary Party had become this and that. And on that basis, 20 years later or 22 years later, the Revolutionary Party is not characteristic of what was then. There is nothing that points out to that behavior in terms of our conduct as ZANU at the moment, especially going by the 2018 elections and the Second Republic, which they were all participants. I'm sure they must be ashamed of debating about this with me, because when it actually took place, I was far away in some country where I had found a corner there on the basis of the situation that was happening internally in the party. I was not there in November when the operation took place. But their leaders were there. I'm sure they agree with that. Their leaders even went on to call the transition in November a miraculous transition. I think you do have that. They even participated in the impeachment process of Robert Mugabe, and they were clear players. And if you go by the videos and pictures, they were the people who jumped the highest celebrating Mugabe's resignation at their instigation as well.
Do you regret that
now,
moment?
I don't regret that moment, but it appears they do, because now they call what happened in November a coup. And they say the Second Republic is a product of a coup. I don't know by what capacity they were involved in a coup themselves, in a process to which they were players. But I'm saying, why I'm raising this witness to you, I'm not trying to be sarcastic with you, but I'm trying to say, sometimes we find it very difficult to engage certain political organizations to say, after that engagement, we don't know where we are going, because the next thing you engage to them during the day like this, but under the cover of darkness, they are having a parallel engagement elsewhere. And that is why it is so easy for them to disown a process to which they were key players in the day, in full view of everyone. But during the next day, they can wake up and say, no, we're not part of it. Just as much as you would agree with me that during the inclusive government and the signing of the global political agreement, their supposed or so-called doyen of democracy, Morgan Tsvangirai, called upon repeatedly and to fly to the United States of America to meet Obama and say sanctions on Zimbabwe must be removed. You do that have on record. Everyone among them were singing that tune during the inclusive government. Now, 10 years later, after the inclusive government, what is their thinking? Sanctions must remain. The kind of Denmark, the kind of Germany, one dozen. Sanctions are not the reason why we are not developing. They must be there. That's some people, isn't it? But when it was convenient for them as players in government, under the inclusive government, sanctions needed to go. So that's why I'm saying we don't take certain people seriously when they raise issues, because now we know that certain issues for them are not for purposes of end developmental discord, but for purposes of electioneering. And it is quite interesting that they are so predictable that in this period preceding to elections, it is when you start to hear this music about so-called human rights violations, about so-called violence, and we know that part of what they'll be talking about are false flag operations. False flag operations that you also saw with your eyes. You hear there is a doctor, a medical doctor that has been abducted in Zimbabwe, and that doctor is supposed to be Magombe, who announces to the world that Magombe has been abducted. It is himself. And the abductors would be stupid enough to allow him to continue to use his phone call during the abduction spree and even communicate with his relatives during that process. And only after 1 week he announces that he has found himself, traces his way to Harare. He is inspected for any injuries, including by peer doctors, and nothing is detected out of that. And then the police are trying to understand what really happened. What was this kind of a stupid false flag operation? Yeah. The next thing, that doctor is given a green card in the United States of America, and they are out. But that process was never ventilated. But what is now clearer to you and me is that it was false. So I'm saying we also see genuine cases.
I appreciate that point, on a point of order. I think I'll be much more happy to have a separate interview between me and you on these specific issues. Yes. What I really want to have from you guys as colleagues, as the main players in this political discourse, is a guarantee that says us as stakeholders, we are going to practice and exercise our due powers to make sure that we have, number one, a tolerant election, number two, a violence-free election. Unless if you're saying these warranty and created violence to be then put in
listen what is here. That's why I'm saying that on our part, we don't really need their buy-in to say that we'll not engage in this election violently. It is supposed to be a culture. We literally should blame ourselves collectively for not having allowed this culture to take root long back. So we don't need them to say they will not engage in violence so that we will say we will also reciprocate and not engage in violence. We will literally need to obliterate it completely. So we will not engage in violence, and that is why our message, I must be frank, I don't hate your leader, Ellen, but your leader is not clear about violence conduct. He's not clear about peaceful elections. But I don't love your leader because I have mine and he's enough to deserve my attention and my respect. But your leader doesn't like violence, it appears. And that is why he talks about rational disputation. When I look at Professor Maduka, I can be clearer that this person doesn't like violence. He makes it very clear. He doesn't go about flaunting instruments of violence that are supposedly hidden at somebody's back to say, I do have, but it's only that I don't want to use them. And then you say that person is clear on violence. But then what is interesting is that when they make those statements, they are the first to make a lot of noise as victims. You say the police are biased towards the ZANU-PF. What we just don't do, Tony, I'm addressing to some of the issues that were raised. Witness, we also have rallies stopped by the police. We also have rallies banned by the police. But like I told you, and I can show you by the book, during the by-election, witness, we had 7 rallies of ZANU-PF banned and postponed by the Zimbabwe Republic Police to accommodate others. Let me just no, but listen, I think I've been a loyal listener as well. I don't know whether we should reflect the polarization here, but I'm saying we have had rallies banned for us, with 7 of them during the by-elections alone. But the difference between you and us is that when we have been told by the regulating authority to not proceed with a particular rally, we don't then say, go to the public and say, police have, in one of the 7, we had 7, you're not aware because we don't go to the party about that. That is not our manifesto. But we come
where the police
listen,
actually
if you ask him and you want them to be genuine, in one of the rallies, we actually, all of us, theirs, if he takes records from their part, CCC and ZANU-PF had their two rallies postponed from a particular day to a particular day to be shared to accommodate their rally. The rally Anna witnessed do in Epworth. Only we had penciled rallies at the same time in venues that were closer to each other. The rally for ZANU-PF and CCC were sacrificed for theirs. And theirs took the next day, and ours had to take the next day.
Is that the ban that you're talking about?
No, I'm giving you an example that those bans were taking place. But we are not campaigning as ZANU-PF on the basis that there is human rights violations because a rally has been postponed or it has been banned to allow other political parties to do theirs. Like what they do, because others do so. Not because they are sincere about the reasons why their rally has been banned, but because they want to show a false flag picture to the world that they are victims of a certain conspiracy. Yet this is just genuine policy. That is why we don't go to town about it.
If we may assist Mkwadi, Tonio, you see, Mkwadi will always have a problem justifying himself and looking at the standard that we expect as an opposition, and that on behalf of many other people who are not part of the ruling party. Because what he's saying, the concessions that they've done, they were never voluntary on their part. This has been a concerted push.
I'll push you to run through, because already we are.
I'm not going to take a long time. I'm just going to say that point to say this has been a concerted push by the opposition. So we understand where we want to push his government to. And because he doesn't understand, he thinks he has arrived. You want us to appreciate the 1 or 2 slices that they've offered on the breakfast table. We want the whole loaf as the people of Zimbabwe, and we are not going to stop because they've offered 1 or 2 slices. If he talks about, you see, the attitude that he actually reflected earlier on, it will be regrettable coming from this workshop also, to say that there is nothing, according to their estimation, that says that they should be afraid of an election because it's, according to him, maybe it's done and dusted. This is the language that we have seen from ZANU PF, even days before an apocalypse. You know, you remember what First Lady Grace Mugabe was saying days before Vice President Mnangagwa was to be. So we don't want that kind of an attitude. We don't want this attitude of having an assurance which will then shock you if things don't go your way.
But
and
by
you are
what
forced.
standards should we expect to be defeated by your party, for example? By what standards should ZANU-PF expect to
The
be
issue
defeated?
is not. The
Let's be
issue is
honest.
not. The issue is not about a standard, because that even is
In your remarks, Mr. Witness, I'm sorry, because of the context and the programming of this quick show. I think we'll have a second one where we'll do political contestation on ideas and issues. Lest we dive into that one. I'll give you 30 seconds. Can you close that as an assurance of the MDC, making sure that there's going to be tolerance and non-violence 2023? We close with Ellen and with him and then Ellen. On a quick one.
Yeah, we've taken much longer than we expected. So as the MDC, we want to assure the people of Zimbabwe that the blend of democracy that we believe in is a democracy that says the voice belongs to the people of Zimbabwe. It doesn't belong to us. At this moment, we are assured of nothing except that which the people of Zimbabwe are going to pronounce as being our portion at the elections. However, we will continue to work for an electoral playing field. We'll continue a level electoral playing field. We'll continue to engage other political parties in terms of exterminating completely and totally the scourge of violence, because we think it is doable. We comment, to some extent, we comment to some extent the change of fortunes, in terms of how our last elections were held, and perhaps how the situation is now going to the next election. But it is not enough. It is far from what we want. We don't want the level of inflammatory remarks that are happening now, because they are a great risk to taking us back to where we are coming from.
Thank you.
In the earlier years of our country.
All right. Ellen?
Thank you. The discourse here in the last few minutes.
In your last 30 seconds,
yes,
sorry.
It's a clear indication that we have a problem as a nation. Let's have a reality check and be true to ourselves in terms of our values. If that chronic thing is the CCC, how many of our values were banned, and the reasons, even if you look at the reasons for the ban, you could clearly tell there's a problem, but let's not go there for now. But let me hasten to say, as a party, we are clear about the need for a peaceful electoral environment, and we are committed to that. We will execute all means with regards to the spaces that we are in to implore for reforms.
If we have a free, fair election in Zimbabwe, is your party ready to accept the outcome of such an election?
Yeah. This
Thank
is
you
why
very
we
much.
exist in elections, to either win or lose, but as a party we are winning. Thank you for that.
Right. Over to you, Tafazo Ngwadi. 30 seconds.
I hope they are being genuine. Some of them have never accepted an electoral result since 2000.
You're speaking on their behalf. You're speaking on the. I want you to speak on behalf of your party.
Look here,
I want
we
to-
contest each other, Tonio. That's why they can talk about us freely.
Yes.
I thought you should have cautioned them earlier.
Yeah.
They have never accepted electoral results since 2000, and that is a fact.
That's why I said,
They
should
have
we have a
never
free and
congratulated,
fair
and there is no
playing
guarantee
field?
that they will do that in 2023. But who
You
does
should
need
not
that
speak for
guarantee?
the triple
The
C.
purpose is that we go to elections for the people of Zimbabwe to decide which party wins. In this case,
In a condition
I
of a
should
free and
not-
fair election,
Yes,
Mr.
and
Tafazo.
in a manner that all the parties contesting will be satisfied.
Yes.
But on top of it, we are going to win, and that is why we are very clear about it, and there is nothing that provokes violence to say that ZANU-PF is going to win. Look at the telltale signs. Ukaona mashizha emuti ochinja kuita ruvara rwegirini kudai, ziva kuti zhezha rasvika. Haisi mhosva kutanga kugadzira mombe kuti urime. Ndo zvatava kuita.
Last question, in 15 seconds. Should we have a free and fair election in Zimbabwe?
We actually have a record of having them, and we will have.
No, they've been
free and
contestable,
fair
Mr. Tafazo. Our elections have been contestable. Should we all agree to a level playing field? Should you agree to a level playing field, which all political parties agree before they get to an election? Is ZANU-PF ready to accept a defeat in an electoral election? Is ZANU-PF ready to accept a defeat in such an election?
You see, the problem, you are trying to force me to postulate a possible ZANU-PF electoral loss.
An
When
attitude.
we are
I want
going
you to
to
postulate
win,
an
I'm
attitude towards an
the
election.
attitude is
Are you
that
ready to give up
ZANU-PF
power?
respects the statement that we respect electoral outcomes as they are, reflecting the people of Zimbabwe, is sufficient enough
And we
to
have no
describe
outcomes
our
right now.
character after the election and our behavior after the election. But what I can assure you is that, and I will never tire, if you would take it a point to ask me this question every part of the interview, I will tell you that we are ready to win, to form the next government for the second term of President Mnangagwa.
Even
Because
if you
one
lose
good
the
term
election?
deserves another. There's no point of losing elections. Like I said, if you
So should
keep
we
asking
lose
me
an-
this question, I will tell you we are ready to win. We'll win.
I think
It closes.
They've gotten it. They should.
These are politicians, political party representatives. I was expecting this midway of this interview. I'm happy it came at the end of the interview. And as you can all see, the three parties, I love this. This is the moment that I really love, when all these three can hold hands, laugh together. So must it be as well to the same political party supporters that are watching this video. If all these political players, leaders from your political parties, can sit down and have a rational discussion like this, so should we, and so can we as Zimbabweans.
Just to cut you, I think it was important for purposes of this interview for leaders represented here to warn and advise their supporters to respect the men and women of the camera when attending to political functions. As Director of Information and Publicity,
That's
for
your
the
closing
ruling
remark
party,
now.
I don't want to be inundated with calls about victimization of journalists by anyone purporting to represent the party, ZANU-PF. It is not our culture. We abhor that, and whenever that last happened, that should be the last time we hear about that.
I thank you, and I salute
thought I
you.
needed to make it
Very important as well. That was going to be my closing remarks as far as the media, us, the stakeholders, is concerned as well. Witness, 10 seconds. Your attitude towards media press assaults and harassment of journalists. We've been victims to this as well.
Well, yeah, we also have had a few incidents of our own, journalists reporting that they were not allowed access. Again, I would say it's not our party policy. We believe in the free flow of information because it is on the basis of information and the fulfillment of Chapter 61 of our Constitution that people can make sound decisions. So it is a no. Journalists, as the fourth estate, must be given unfettered access to do their work uninterrupted.
Thank you for that guarantee. Ellen?
Yes, we political parties and journalists, we have a mutual relationship. We need each other. Journalists in an election cannot exist without us, and we can't exist without journalists as well. So we are preaching a culture of tolerance amongst our people. And of course, we are preaching a culture of, objective and truthful reporting on the part of our journalists. we should have a mutual understanding. This is why we're here in this conference, discussing on the way forward as to how best we can build and strengthen that relationship. But from our parties at the CCC, we do not support any violence against media people or any other person out there.
We thank you for that guarantee. I think also on behalf of the association that I represent, the Zimbabwe Online Content Creators as well, I think we do fully appreciate and acknowledge this form of warranty, sufficient guaranteeing safety towards all journalists who are going to be moving around and practicing their craft of journalism, because I don't think it's going to be okay for all journalists to demand helmets and bulletproofs before they come and cover your political rallies, because it is becoming toxic and very dangerous on their lives. I've been a victim as well as far as this political violence is concerned while I was covering your political rally. I think it goes to more other journalists there, which when they see senior journalists like us being attacked, they'll then think that, well, it's not the best place for them to be trading, and then you end up having a complete shutdown on electoral coverage. So I do appreciate you, and I do thank you so much for being leadership that you are, representing your various political parties, and more importantly, giving us a guarantee that Zimbabweans can unite and we can find each other, and surely we are Zimbabweans first. As you can see right now, the three of you being able to have a rational discourse and discussion towards political parties. I will not give you any more microphone and closing remarks, but I want to salute you and thank you for being here, and thank you for showing leadership by coming through together and talking to your political party supporters that Zimbabwe comes first and is much more important. I thank you, and to our viewers who've been watching us all along. These are the various political party leaders that we've got here. They are leading by example. We also have a mandate as Zimbabweans to make sure that our 2023 and going forward is peaceful, sustainable, and we have a beautiful, prosperous country going forward. My name is Tonyo. I do thank you so much for taking this time with us and having this chit chat.
Thank you, madam.
Cheers.